Imagine this: someone shouts in your face at work, their words sharp and humiliating. Here's the paradox: society often mistakes calm for weakness. But what if calm is not a lack of power, but the ultimate form of it? What if the person who refuses to be rattled is actually the one holding all the control? Think about it. The angrier someone tries to make you, the more they reveal their own chains. But when you stay unbothered, when you refuse to hand them your peace, suddenly the power shifts entirely. Today, you're going to uncover the Stoic secret to being unbothered, an ancient philosophy proven by modern psychology that shows you how to master calm while others lose control. This is more than self-help advice. This is the art of liberation, because the truth is simple. When you master your calm, nothing and no one can master you. Part 1: The ancient rule that makes you untouchable. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." At first glance, it sounds simple, almost obvious, but pause and look deeper. What he's really saying is that every time you lose control, every time you let anger dictate your actions or bitterness poison your mind, you are surrendering your freedom. You are no longer your own master. You are chained to the emotions others provoke in you. This is not just philosophy, it's a radical redefinition of power. Because true strength isn't about controlling the outside world, which is impossible. It's about ruling the only kingdom you ever fully possess, your own mind. Marcus Aurelius carried this same torch of wisdom in his meditations. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Notice the subtle but profound shift in perspective. Most people exhaust themselves trying to bend the world to their will, arguing, fighting, manipulating, only to discover that life refuses to cooperate. But the Stoics knew the secret. Power lies not in domination, but in discipline. The moment you stop being ruled by circumstances, insults, or chaos, you discover a form of strength that no one can take from you. Calm becomes your shield, and self-mastery your sword. Think about the way conflict usually plays out. Someone insults you, mocks your ideas, or dismisses your worth. Instinctively, your body reacts, your heart races, adrenaline spikes, words rise to your lips like fire on the tongue. This is the ancient wiring of survival, your nervous system interpreting disrespect as danger. Modern psychology calls this the fight or flight response, a cascade designed to keep you safe. But here's the problem: most of the threats you face today are not life or death, they're emotional. And when you let this reflex control you, you hand over the keys to your peace. You let someone else's mood determine your destiny. The Stoics taught a different response. Instead of being dragged around by every impulse, they practiced what we now call cognitive distancing, creating a gap between stimulus and response. Epictetus advised his students, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That gap, that pause, is where freedom lives. It's the moment when you catch yourself and remember, this insult is just sound. This problem is just an event. My reaction is my choice. In that instant, you take back control. Picture yourself as a mountain in a storm. The wind screams, the rain lashes, lightning splits the sky. Around you, trees bend and break, rivers swell and overflow. But the mountain remains unmoved, grounded in its own weight. Life storms will never stop, insults, setbacks, unfairness, betrayal, but you are not required to bend with every gust. You can choose to stand unshaken, and in that stillness, you find something extraordinary. No one can touch you unless you grant them entry. Here's your practice. The next time someone tries to provoke you, don't rush to answer. Feel the surge in your chest, notice the heat in your face, and then breathe. Remind yourself they can choose chaos. I choose calm. That single decision changes everything. Because when you no longer give others the power to pull your strings, you become untouchable. You become free. Part 2: The science of staying calm when emotions spread like fire. Anger spreads like wildfire. Step into a room where tempers flare and you feel your chest tighten before a word is even spoken. Sit beside someone who's anxious and suddenly your own breath turns shallow. This isn't superstition, it's science. Psychologists call it emotional contagion. Feelings can leap from one person to another like sparks in dry grass. At the core of this process are mirror neurons, tiny circuits in your brain that echo the expressions and tones you witness. When someone frowns, your face tenses automatically. When someone raises their voice, your nervous system readies for battle. Emotions are the glue that binds us, but this glue can also trap us, pulling us into moods that were never ours to begin with. The Stoics didn't know the biology, but they understood the danger. Marcus Aurelius warned himself not to be swept along by the moods of the multitude. Epictetus reminded his students that when others lose their composure, the wise must guard their own. What they intuited is what neuroscience now confirms. Your environment can hijack your emotional state unless you actively resist. Resistance doesn't mean isolation, it means awareness. Imagine walking into a heated office meeting. One colleague slams the table, another interrupts with sharp words. The air thickens with frustration. Without noticing, your heart races. Your jaw sets, your voice rises. The fire that started in one corner spreads quickly. Here's what this means for you today. You don't have to be dragged into the chaos. Becoming conscious of the spread is the first step. Instead of mirroring the anger, recognize it as theirs, not yours. Listen without matching their intensity. Keep your tone steady. In that moment, you act like a fire break. The sparks may fly, but your calm prevents them from igniting inside you. Calm is just as contagious as chaos. Research shows that steady breathing, a measured voice, and relaxed posture can actually regulate the physiology of those around you. Picture a group in turmoil, like a jazz band mid-performance where everyone panics except one steady drummer who keeps the tempo. That single presence allows the group to recover. You can be that steady beat, the anchor others don't even realize they need. The Stoics compared the wise person to a doctor among the sick. If everyone around you is infected with panic or rage, will you catch it, or will you bring the antidote? Storms of emotion will always rage around you, but they don't last forever. When you stand firm, you don't just protect yourself, you create space for others to find their footing too. Calm isn't passive, it's active influence. By practicing awareness, measured response, and steady presence, you can transform any emotionally charged environment. The choice is yours: be swept along or be the one who steadies the room. Every time you do, you strengthen a habit the Stoics practiced centuries ago, and one that science proves works today. Part 3: The leader who stayed calm while Europe burned. In moments of crisis, people look for voices that can steady the storm. In the last 2 decades, one of those voices belonged to Angela Merkel, often affectionately called Muddy, the mother of Europe. She rose to leadership not with fiery speeches or dramatic gestures, but with a kind of quiet, unwavering calm. And that calm was tested again and again. During the Eurozone crisis, when Greece faced collapse and the entire financial stability of Europe seemed ready to unravel, Merkel was under immense pressure. Headlines screamed, protesters marched, leaders shouted. She was accused of being too harsh, too soft, too slow, too fast, all at once. Then came the refugee crisis, with millions fleeing war and desperation, and Europe divided over whether to open or close its doors. Again, the pressure was unbearable. In press conferences, reporters hurled hostile questions. Critics painted her as naive or worse, responsible for chaos. Yet time after time, Merkel met the frenzy not with outrage, not with defensiveness, but with composure. Her voice rarely rose, her posture rarely shifted. She spoke with measured words, steady and calm, no matter how intense the flames around her grew. What Merkel embodied in those moments is a living example of Stoic leadership. Marcus Aurelius, himself a ruler of an empire under constant strain, wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment." Merkel refused to let the storms of public opinion dictate her stance. She did not chase applause, nor did she cave to outrage. Like a true Stoic, she acted from principle rather than passion. She focused not on what others shouted, but on what she believed would serve the long-term stability of her people. Modern psychology tells us that this kind of leadership works precisely because calm is contagious. In a crisis, the brain looks for cues of safety. When a leader panics, followers panic too. But when a leader remains steady, that steadiness ripples outward. Merkel's quiet tone acted like an anchor in turbulent seas. It reassured people, even those who disagreed with her policies, that someone at the helm was not losing control. Her restraint made her a stabilizing force in a continent on the verge of tearing itself apart. The Stoics would say that Merkel's strength came not from her ability to control Europe's storms. They were far bigger than her, but from her refusal to be controlled by them. Seneca warned that anger and fear are like diseases of the mind. They spread quickly and corrupt judgment. A leader then must be immune, not by pretending the danger isn't real, but by refusing to let passion distort reason. Merkel understood this instinctively. She once remarked that in politics, you must learn to listen long enough to understand and only then to decide. This patience, this resistance to reactive emotion is precisely what made her unshakable in moments when others would have broken. Imagine if you carried this same quality into your own life. Maybe you're not leading nations, but you are leading yourself, your family, your team. When conflict erupts at work, when your children are overwhelmed, when the people around you descend into panic, you have a choice. You can be swept into the noise, or you can be the steady voice, the unbothered presence that holds the ground. The Stoic way is not about ignoring problems, it's about facing them with clarity, principle, and an even hand. Your practice here is to ask yourself in moments of conflict, am I reacting to the crowd or am I acting from principle? If you find your voice rising just because others are loud, pause. If you feel your mood shifting just because others are panicking, pause. In that pause lies the power Merkel displayed, the power Marcus Aurelius demanded of himself, to act not from noise but from reason. When you choose calm, you become the anchor, and when you are the anchor, no storm, no matter how great, can pull you away. Part 4. The athlete who beat pressure with silence. On the tennis court, pressure is everywhere. Thousands of eyes follow your every move, millions watch from their screens, and the smallest mistake is replayed in slow motion around the world. In this unforgiving arena, many players crack, throwing rackets, shouting at umpires, cursing the crowd. But one figure built his legacy not only on brilliance but on composure: Roger Federer. Federer was known not just for his graceful game, but for his calm, almost unshakable demeanor. Even when the crowd turned against him, when boos rained down after a controversial call, or when an umpire's decision went against him in a pivotal moment, he rarely exploded. He didn't waste his energy on rage. Instead, he turned inward, focusing on the next serve, the next point, the flow of the match. His silence was not weakness, it was his weapon. By refusing to let external chaos dictate his inner state, he preserved the clarity needed to win. This is Stoicism in action. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. On court, Federer faced the same frustrations as any other player: bad luck, unfair calls, hostile environments. But his mastery came from the ability to hold steady, to separate the event from the reaction. Just as Marcus Aurelius reminded himself not to be disturbed by the clamor of others, Federer reminded us that true control lies in mastering your response. Modern psychology sheds light on why this matters. When anger surges, your body floods with cortisol and adrenaline. Your vision narrows, your thinking becomes rigid, and your performance suffers. That's why athletes who rage often spiral downward. They've handed control to emotion. Federer's silence was a psychological strategy. By staying calm, he kept his mind open, his body fluid, his decisions sharp. His opponents, expecting drama, instead faced a wall of composure that made them even more unsettled. Now picture your own life as a kind of match. The office meeting where a colleague undermines you. The family argument where voices rise. The online thread where someone tries to bait you. These are your courts, your umpires, your hostile crowds. If you meet noise with noise, you lose your clarity. But if you answer with calm, sometimes with silence, you hold the advantage. You remain the one in control. The Stoics knew that silence itself could be a form of victory. Seneca wrote, "It is better to conquer anger than to vent it." Federer proved that on the court. You can prove it in your life. Here's your practice. When faced with unfairness or provocation, resist the reflex to defend yourself instantly. Instead, breathe, stay focused on your next point, the action that actually matters. Let your silence disarm the noise. Like Federer, you'll discover that calm is not just protection, it's the sharpest weapon you have. Federer showed it on the grand stage. But Stoicism isn't reserved for champions. It's needed most where none of the cameras roll. Part 5: How Stoic calm works at home, online, and at work. You don't need a tennis court to practice this. In fact, the most important battles are the ones fought in kitchens, in office hallways, and in the silence of a glowing phone screen. The arena of Stoicism is not only the public stage, but also the private, ordinary moments where your reactions decide the shape of your day. It's easy to imagine Stoicism as something distant, belonging to emperors and philosophers, carved into stone or whispered in ancient forums. But its power reveals itself most clearly in these small daily tests, at home, at work, online, where your calm becomes either your downfall or your strength. Think first of the home. A child cries relentlessly, their small world collapsing over a toy, a scraped knee, or the simple frustration of not being understood. Your instinct, especially if you're tired or stressed, might be to raise your voice, to meet noise with more noise. But what happens when you do? The child escalates, the tension doubles, the house feels like a battlefield. Now imagine the Stoic path. You pause, you breathe, you remind yourself their emotions are not mine. You kneel down, soften your voice, and guide them gently. The storm passes more quickly, not because you forced it to, but because you refused to fuel it. In that moment, calm restored order. Now step into the digital world. You post a thought, a photo, or an idea, and suddenly a stranger leaves a cruel comment, sharp as a blade. The reflex is to strike back, to defend yourself in front of everyone watching. But here's the Stoic truth. Responding with anger only hands your power to them. You become a puppet on their string. Instead, you can choose silence, or if you reply, a brief and measured answer. The attacker loses their stage. Their drama collapses when you deny it fuel. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that the opinions of others are nothing more than breath and air. Why let them weigh down your peace? Finally, picture yourself at work. A client storms in, their voice rising, their frustration spilling across the room. Everyone watches, waiting to see how you'll react. If you meet anger with anger, the conflict grows and resolution slips further away. But if you hold steady, listening, acknowledging, and keeping your tone even, the energy shifts. The client may still be upset, but the situation remains under control. Your calm disarms the chaos, and suddenly, instead of two fires colliding, there's a path toward resolution. In the end, you don't just save the moment, you earn respect. Modern psychology affirms what the Stoics practiced: emotions regulate each other. When you hold calm, you invite others to match your steadiness. When you lose it, you drag everyone further into the storm. That is why calm is not passive, it is active leadership, whether with a child, a stranger online, or a furious customer. Your practice is this: in the next ordinary conflict, before reacting, pause and ask, what outcome do I want here? Let that question anchor you. At home, it might be peace. Online, it might be dignity. At work, it might be resolution. In each case, calm becomes your path. You don't need to be an emperor to practice Stoicism. You need only the next moment and the choice to master yourself within it. Part 6: 4 Simple Stoic Tricks to Stay Unbothered. If you look closely, you'll see that most conflicts in your life don't begin with what others do, but with how instantly you react. The insult, the delay, the unfairness, they strike like sparks, but sparks only become fires if you feed them. The Stoics understood this long before psychology gave us the vocabulary. True mastery lies in the first moment, the gap between what happens and what you choose to do about it. 4 timeless practices, deceptively simple yet transformative, can help you remain unshaken when the world tries to rattle you. The first is the pause rule. When anger lands, your body floods with adrenaline. Your instinct is to fire back, slam the keys, raise your voice, lash out before thought can intervene. But a pause, even 3 seconds, reclaims your sovereignty. That pause is not empty, it is a shield. It allows the reasoning part of your brain to rise above the primitive flare of the amygdala. Epictetus said, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Neuroscience agrees. Delay reactivates the prefrontal cortex where judgment lives. Try it in traffic the next time someone cuts you off. Heat will rise, but if you breathe and wait, the wave passes. The storm loses its hold. The pause is not weakness. It is your sword returning to its sheath until you choose the right strike. The second is the higher view. Marcus Aurelius often asked himself, will this matter a year from now, a month from now? Most of the irritations that consume us dissolve under the weight of perspective. This practice is known in psychology as temporal distancing, imagining yourself in the future, looking back at the present. It works because distance shrinks intensity. Think of standing on a mountain ridge. From the ground, the noise of the city feels suffocating. From the ridge, it's a faint hum. The same problem, different vantage. The higher view is your mountain. Climb it, and the chaos shrinks beneath you. The third is the dichotomy of control, the cornerstone of Stoicism. Epictetus carved it into stone. Some things are in your control, others are not. Your choices, your effort, your words, those are yours. The weather, other people's opinions, the past, never yours. Yet notice how often we spend our lives wrestling with the uncontrollable, like trying to stop the tide with bare hands. Modern psychology calls this locus of control. People who focus on their sphere of influence are calmer, stronger, and less anxious. Picture yourself leading a project where criticism rains down unfairly. You cannot silence the critics, but you can control your preparation, your composure, your clarity. Once you make that shift, the critic's words become background noise like wind against a fortress wall. The fourth is the silent strategy. Seneca declared, "It is better to conquer anger than to vent it." Silence unsettles because it denies your opponent the reward they seek, your reaction. Think of Roger Federer on court after a bad call, shaking his head, then calmly walking back to serve. His silence unnerves opponents more than any protest could. Or Angela Merkel, often caricatured in headlines, who would answer criticism with restraint or none at all, outlasting the storm until her calm became her strength. Psychologists call this extinction. When behavior is not reinforced, it fades. Silence doesn't mean indifference, it means choosing your battlefield. Sometimes the most powerful statement is none at all. Together, these four tools form a shield for the soul. To pause is to reclaim time. To take the higher view is to shrink what feels overwhelming. To embrace control is to invest your energy wisely. To stay silent is to deny chaos its oxygen. And yet, these practices are not easy. They feel unnatural at first, like swimming against a current. But over time, the current weakens and you discover the freedom of calm waters. Imagine yourself as a lighthouse in a storm. Waves crash, winds howl, ships scatter in panic, but you remain steady, casting light that others used to navigate. That is the image of the unbothered Stoic. Not cold, not detached, but firm, radiant, untouchable. So don't memorize these practices, live them, try one today. Pause before you reply, ask whether this will matter a year from now. Accept what you cannot control. Answer chaos with silence. Each time you succeed, you reinforce a truth the Stoics knew well. Strength isn't loud, strength is steady. And when you live this way, you will find that the world's storms no longer dictate your peace, because you have become the mountain, the lighthouse, the anchor in the sea. Part 7: Why calm people secretly hold all the power. Power has always been misunderstood. People often mistake volume for influence or aggression for authority. Yet the Stoics saw through this illusion 2,000 years ago. Epictetus warned, "He who angers you conquers you." The moment someone pushes you to rage, they own you. Marcus Aurelius put it even more sharply: true strength is not in bending others to your will, but in refusing to let them bend your inner state. If you are calm, you are free. If you are free, you are untouchable. Modern psychology confirms this. Emotional reactivity, snapping back, losing composure isn't strength, it's surrender. Neuroscience shows that when anger takes over, the amygdala floods your body with stress hormones, clouding judgment. You stop choosing, you simply react. In contrast, emotional regulation activates the prefrontal cortex, the seat of higher reasoning. Staying calm means you are thinking on a different, more powerful level than those around you. Calm people often rise to the top in crises because they are trusted. Their stability is magnetic. A person who cannot be rattled carries an aura no outburst can match. Take Fred Rogers, known to generations as Mr. Rogers. In a media landscape built on spectacle and noise, he chose calm as his language. His pauses were deliberate. His voice gentle, his presence steady. When public broadcasting funding was threatened in 1969, Rogers testified before Congress. He didn't shout or grandstand. He spoke with unwavering composure about the importance of kindness. His quiet calm persuaded skeptical politicians and secured the funding. He showed that calm achieves what shouting never could. The paradox is simple. The loudest person in the room often has the least control. Noise signals insecurity and inner chaos spilling outward. The calmest person, by contrast, holds the most control, not over others, but over themselves. Self-mastery always ripples outward. People listen to the calm voice because it carries weight. People follow the steady presence because it promises safety. So when you feel the urge to snap, to argue, or to let anger dictate your actions, pause, ask yourself, am I giving away my power? Each time you resist, you reclaim your freedom. Each time you stay composed, you rise above the noise. Calm is not weakness. Calm is command. It is the hidden force that bends the room toward you without demanding it. Wear it as protection from chaos and as a quiet statement of power. The world will always try to provoke you, but only you can decide whether to be moved. Stand steady. Hold your ground. In stillness, you are not just unbothered, you are untouchable. He who angers you conquers you. Elizabeth Kenny's words carry the same sharp truth that Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius all tried to impress upon their students. The real battle is not against the world outside, but against the impulses inside. Every time anger rules you, you've given away your crown, your sovereignty, your freedom. Life won't pause for your peace. People will cut you off, post harsh comments, raise their voices. You can't stop the waves, but you can become the shore. Think about the moments you regret most. Chances are they weren't when you stayed quiet or held your composure. They were the times you snapped back, sent the angry message, let someone's words decide your mood. Those are the moments where your freedom slipped from your hands. Now picture the opposite, holding your ground, breathing before reacting, meeting provocation with dignity. That memory would be one of pride, not shame. Calm doesn't erase conflict, it transforms it. It keeps you untouchable. Picture yourself 10 years from now. The storms of today, arguments, insults, frustrations, will be nothing but memories. Will you remember the times you lost your temper or the times you held steady even when it was hardest? I promise you, 10 years from now, you will never regret the moments you stayed calm. You will only regret the ones you didn't. The world does not need more noise. It needs anchors. Be the anchor. Your calm is your crown. It is not a fragile ornament. It is a shield, a source of strength that no one can steal unless you hand it over. So next time someone tries to drag you into their storm, pause, breathe, and choose your response. Stand firm, hold your ground. Let your calm radiate outward, silently commanding the space around you. That is power, that is freedom, that is unshakable strength. If this message spoke to you, subscribe for more lessons in Stoicism and psychology. Share this video with someone who could use the reminder that calmness is power. And let me know in the comments, what's the last situation where you wish you had stayed unbothered? Your story might help someone else reclaim their crown. Stay steady, stay unshakable, and never forget your calm is your greatest strength.